Hi everyone, it's Sarah here and I'm so excited to welcome you all to today's conversation. We're going to be talking about cooking, persimmons, and some fun stories from the kitchen. So let's dive in. So the other day I was preparing this wonderful dish for a family gathering, a persimmon and arugula salad. I was hosting a small get-together to celebrate Jake's promotion, and I wanted to highlight some of the seasonal produce from our garden and local markets. Persimmons are so vibrant and sweet, and they bring a unique flavor to a salad, especially when paired with peppery greens like arugula. Now, for those who might not know, persimmons are these orange, tomato-like fruits that are rich in sweetness when they're fully ripe. I use them in so many dishes, salads, chutneys, and even desserts like persimmon bread. They're really popular here in California, especially during the fall and winter seasons when they're in peak season. But here's where the twist came in. I went to grab the persimmons from my basket and they were nowhere to be found. Turns out I completely underestimated the demand and there was a shortage at the market that week too. So what did I do? Well, instead of just substituting another fruit like pears or apples, I decided to get a little more creative. I went into the pantry and found sun-dried persimmons that I had saved from last year's batch. But here's the inventive part. I soaked them in a light honey and citrus mixture to rehydrate them just enough to mimic the texture of fresh persimmons. This not only brought back their soft, tender texture, but also added an extra layer of flavor from the honey and citrus, which actually enhanced the salad in a way I hadn't expected. It gave the dish a richer, more complex taste, and honestly, I might use this technique again even when fresh persimmons are available.
Oh wow, Sarah, that's so impressive. I love how you didn't just swap the ingredient, but thought outside the box. The idea of rehydrating dried persimmons with honey and citrus is genius. I bet it added a lovely depth. What kind of honey did you use? Local, I assume?
Yes, exactly. I used wildflower honey from a local beekeeper. It added a nice floral note that paired perfectly with the citrus and arugula.
That's brilliant, Sarah. The way you transformed dried persimmons is something I could definitely try with my food truck. I imagine it must have really elevated the salad. How did the texture compare to fresh persimmons?
The texture was slightly chewier than fresh persimmons, but the soaking made them tender enough to balance well with the arugula. It gave a nice contrast to the salad that I think everyone appreciated.
Oh, Sarah, I love that. I can already picture the salad on one of my dinner tables. I'm curious, though, how did you come up with the idea to soak them in honey and citrus? Was it something you had tried before?
Actually, it came to me in the moment. I knew I needed moisture to rehydrate them, and the idea of pairing honey and citrus just felt right to complement the sweetness of the persimmons.
That's such a thoughtful way to deal with the shortage, Sarah. I'm curious, did the dish have a more pronounced flavor with the dried persimmons? I'm thinking the concentrated flavor could have made it even more flavorful.
Yes, Jennifer, you're right. The flavor was definitely more concentrated, which added a sweet, tangy burst with every bite. It was richer compared to the subtle sweetness of fresh persimmons.
Following what you said about flavor, I'd say one critical criterion when buying persimmons is ripeness. When you're working with persimmons, you want to make sure they're perfectly ripe. Otherwise, you risk that astringent taste. In New York, I usually buy persimmons in late fall, and I always make sure they're soft to the touch before using them in desserts or chutneys. If they're underripe, they can ruin a dish. I've made that mistake once before.
That's so true, Chloe. And to add to that, I think another important criterion is texture. I buy persimmons for my farm-to-table dinners, and in Texas, they need to have a nice firm yet soft feel when slightly pressed, especially for fresh salads, or when I slice them for snacks. People should be careful of overripe ones. They tend to get mushy, which isn't ideal for a lot of dishes.
Great points, ladies. I'd also say size matters. For my food truck, I like using larger persimmons when I'm preparing dishes like grilled persimmons or even in salsas. In Florida, we get some nice plump persimmons, and bigger fruits usually have more flesh, which is great when you're preparing meals for large crowds. But you've got to be cautious, as overly large ones can sometimes be watery.
I agree, Maya, but I think the color is also a great indicator. Here in Washington, I always look for a deep, vibrant orange. That's when I know their peak flavor. A lighter color could mean it's either underripe or just not flavorful enough. You have to watch out for blemishes or dull spots because they could mean the fruit has been damaged.
I love all these suggestions. I'd like to add that fragrance is important too. In California, the ripe ones usually give off this amazing sweet aroma when they're ready to eat. If it doesn't have a scent, it's probably not ripe yet. And when you're buying persimmons, always check for that subtle, sweet smell.
Persimmons aren't available, but I'd recommend trying figs. They have a similar sweetness and texture. In New York, we get great figs in the summer, and I've used them in salads and desserts. They have a delicate texture, but offer a depth of flavor that can complement dishes in the same way persimmons do.
Oh, figs are a great choice, Chloe. In Washington, I often turn to apples as an alternative, especially the crisp and slightly sweet varieties like Honeycrisp. They have a wonderful crunch, and while they aren't as sweet as persimmons, they add freshness and a nice balance to salads.
That's interesting, Emily. In Texas, I'd go for prickly pears. They have a unique sweetness that reminds me a bit of persimmons. The texture is a little more grainy, but they work beautifully in salads or salsas, and they're very refreshing.
Those are all great alternatives. In Florida, I'd say papayas are a fantastic substitute. They're soft, sweet, and pair well with both savory and sweet dishes. They're not exactly like persimmons, but they offer that tropical sweetness that's perfect for salads or even desserts.
I love all the ideas and insights you ladies have shared. Chloe, you talked about ripeness and how important it is to get that perfect softness in New York. Jennifer, you highlighted the texture, which is key, especially in salads. Maya, your point on size was spot on, and Emily, I agree. Color really does signal when they're just right. And I loved hearing your suggestions for alternatives. Figs, apples, prickly pears, and papayas all sound delicious. Thanks so much everyone for contributing such great advice on persimmons. Well, that's all from us today. Thank you so much for joining us for this lovely discussion. I hope you've enjoyed learning more about persimmons and all the creative ways you can use them in your dishes. Until next time, happy cooking!